Hello, and welcome to my tutorial series on how to make a 2D platformer in Unity. In this video, we're going to learn how to make a nice scrolling background that will move along with our character. Let's begin. So to get started, we're first going to get rid of our blue backgrounds here, which I was just at first just copying and pasting along the way. So we're not going to need that anymore. And here's the second one. And by the way, in case you didn't know, up here on any game object, there's a little checkbox. If you check it, the object is no longer in use in the editor at all. You can do it for anything. You can do it for the player if you want. And so now we're going to go ahead and get our background. Now I have it downloaded already here, but we're going to go up here to the asset store. You're going to click search online. I already have it opened right here. And it's going to take you to the asset store. I simply just searched background right here. And the one I chose, and you can choose any one you want. I believe, oh wait, first we got to go here because I used free assets. Click free assets. Here's a list of free backgrounds for you to choose from. I chose this foggy mountain parallax because I did want to do a parallax video also, but this is not a parallax video. This is just going to teach you how to scroll a completed background. And you click here and it will download it into Unity just like we've downloaded assets before. So going back into Unity, back to our scene, actually when I've been doing this, our little character here is kind of off center actually. So we're gonna move him over a bit because the camera follows him. So just to make this all a little neater, I'm going to move him over here more. And where our frog, I'll just move him down here more so he's not in the way. So this way he's a little more centered to the scene here. And, you know, you can move all these other things also, just like you've been moving your backgrounds and cherries. I'm not going to really bother with that right now because that's not what this is about. And if I background into my scene also, you've noticed a couple changes that I've extended the ground because I want to show how the background continues to scroll. So I needed a longer running area for to do that. So anyway, I've already downloaded the background right here. And one of the things this comes with actually, it comes with a little demo. If I click on demo scene right here, it actually comes with an already made up parallax background. So if you go over here, it already comes with a script for it. This nice little neat little script for moving your background. And hey, you can figure out how to attach it. It's just attached to each component. And if I hit play, you'll see in this little demo scene that the whole thing just scrolls. So if you don't really want to spend your time watching the rest of this video, you have a scrolling background right here. You don't need me. You're welcome. But I'm going to keep going for those who want to know the ins and outs of how this is working. So we're going to go back into our scene. And we're going to get started. So now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to right click and I'm going to go down and I'm going to create an empty game object. And I'm simply going to call this BG for background. And I'm going to open up our foggy mountain background. Actually, I think I'm just going to, I'm going to put that into the art folder just to keep everything organized. So I'm going to open up our foggy mountain background here. And as you can see, it has, I think, 10 different art pieces here, and I'm gonna use all of them. I think it's a very nice looking picture. So I'm just going to go ahead and actually before that, I'm gonna just center my background so everything is nice, neat, and in the center. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna stick all these in there. Mountain 2, Mountain 1, Fog 3, 2, 1 for foreground, for background, and clouds. And I've done this from, if you look, I started with what is the back. I put it up here in the front, or excuse me, at the top, and then I moved down to what's in the front, which is the trees. And yeah, I guess you could put the clouds up here, but they're not going to really be in the way in the end. And then, so now all this is centered, and you can only see the sky right now. And what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to go over here. And if you see, we have our Z direction for our frame. If I go here and hit 2D, this is our Z. It goes forward and back. If I were to just grab this whole thing, I can move all of it forward and back. Just put it back at 0 for now. And actually, as you can see, backwards away from the camera is positive. Actually, no, that's wrong. Let's find our camera. Actually, no, I'm right. Here's the camera, and back here in this direction is positive from the camera. The camera is -10 away. Let's go back here and put it at 0. And let's go back and click here. And what I'm going to do, starting down here, I'm just going to move each individual thing back. I'm going to put 1 for that, 2 for that, 3 for that. Get the hint here. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and this guy will be last. That'll be 10. So now, as you can see, the background is now layered in the background. Let's go back to this view. So as you can see, just turn the whole thing, zoom out. So as you can see, each individual layer is now pulled back. So it's separated. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. Maybe in the other video or the next video, I'll show a way to layer them. But that's good enough for now, for our purposes. And it's not getting in the way of everything. So now we have our background here in our game. And it does look a little odd with the rest of the artwork. So, you know, this wasn't really chosen for an aesthetic. Well, it's a nice looking, it's a good aesthetic, but I wouldn't say the art style fits with the style of the game. So go ahead and choose whatever you want for your background. It really doesn't make a difference. It doesn't have to be a layered item either. It can just be one picture and it will still work the same way. I just happen to choose this one. So let's go ahead, and the next thing we're going to do is build our script. So I did something a little different with the scripting this time, and it is that I already wrote the script. And right here, I just went right click, create C# script, and which we've done many times before, 24, 25 videos. This is nothing new to you. And I created this new C# script right here, background loop. And I actually went and wrote the script already. And I just figured that you didn't really need to see me misspell things along the way. So I know this script works, and what I did just to sort of go over it with you is that I kind of commented things out, and so I can go over things piece by piece and uncomment them as we need them. So the very first thing I did was that I created a public game object, and it's an array, and I called it levels. We'll get to that in a second. And then I created a private camera, and it's the main camera. This is just referencing the main camera, and a private vector 2 called screen bounds, which is going to be the width of the screen. So with these variables in mind, we have the main camera, which is game object get component camera, which we've done this before with getting components in Unity. We've done it with rigid bodies and colliders. And then screen bounds. What we want to know is what are the bounds of the screen in Unity. So this basically tells us what those things are inside this vector. It says that the main camera dot screen to world point, which is where the camera is, and that we want the screen width, the screen height, and the position of the camera. So it's gonna take the height, width, and position of the camera as it is in Unity, because we're going to take this picture, because if you hadn't noticed yet, this picture doesn't really line up with anything. And what we're going to do through this is when we hit play, eventually, it's going to adjust itself to the width of the screen here, and then it's going to replicate itself over and over again as the character moves. So that's what this is all getting into, and we'll come back to this in a second. Actually, well, we don't have to. This basically is going to load our objects that we put in, our different layers of our scene. I'm sorry, our background that are right here. And then down here, we created a function for it that we're going to load our game objects. And these are the game object obj is going to be passed through here. And then right now, all we're doing is when we hit play, it's just going to list the name of our objects. And then I'll show you how the remainder of this code down here works. So that's all we're going to do right now, is that we're basically going to hit play, and then it will just list these objects right here for us. So now we're going to go ahead, we're going to go up to our main camera, we're going to take our background loop script, we're going to attach it to it, and right here is our array. And an array basically is a list of objects. And then we're going to say that, what did I say? We have 10 of these. So I'm going to put the number 10 here. And it's going to provide, or it's going to want, a place for each of these objects. And I'm just going to put all these in here. And these are the objects it's going to use, that it's going to size up to our screen and loop. Fog 3. Oops. What happened there? Well, we got fog 3, fog 2, fog 1, foreground, background, and clouds. And now that these are all in here, go up here, we'll hit save, and I'll hit play. And because of that debug.log, all it does is just list our objects here. The rest of our game is working as normal. Our cherries, our pineapple, our little frog walking back and forth. Oh, actually, he's going to go all the way here because I think that's where his points are. Anyway, just let that go for now. All right, let's go back to our script. And what we're going to do is we're going to uncomment the remainder of our function right here. And actually, we don't need this debug.log anymore, so I'm just going to take that out. And yes, this should still be commented out because we're not going to use it right now. So just move it over to the side here. We're going to include that into our code a little later on. So starting with the first part here, we have a float object width equals object.getComponent sprite renderer.bounds.size.x. Now what this is it's creating a float, and it's being called object width. And this object is getting a component, and the component is our individual sprites. And what we want to know is how wide they are. This is the bounds of them in the x direction. Then we are going to take wrong line. We're going to create an integer, and it's called child's needed, And this integer, or this child's needed, is going to be used to see how many clones we need to fill the screen. Because as we said earlier, this isn't filling the screen, and that's what we want it to do. So it's an integer, it's called child's needed, and we're just going to concentrate on this part right here for a second, because what we want to do is take our screen bounds, which is up here, it's telling us the width, height, and position of the camera, and we're multiplying it by 2 and dividing it by our object width right here. So because these two right here are floats, we want them to be an integer. We want a nice round number. So that's why we have this parentheses here, and that'll turn these two floats into integers. But we also want it to round it to a nice number, and that's what this right here, this mathf.ceil, it'll round it to the next highest whole number. So now what we want to do after that is we want to create a game object that's going to be one of the clones we're using. So this word right here, instantiate, I don't think we even covered it before. Instantiate is really just creating something. So we're going to create the next object as a game object. And now we need a loop to go through for creating all these clones. So another new thing here is iteration. So here's a for loop, which we've seen before. And here we have an integer, and it's called I, and it's equal to 0, and I less than or equal to child's needed, and then I plus plus. And what this is saying is that we're starting off at a number, we're starting off at 0. And then we're going 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And then we're going to keep doing this until we hit this integer right here, this child's needed, with how many items we need. And then this really says that the I plus plus is that we're incrementing the value as we go forward. So this is how an increment works. So we're going to be using this in terms of creating a game object called C. This will be the clone in the loop, and it's using the clone that we created here as a game object. And then the C right here is going to be set as a child of its parent. So c.transform.setParent object.transform, and then it's going to be given a position, and then this position, transform.position, is going to be equal to a new vector 3, a three-dimensional or a space with three components, an x component, a y component, and a z component. So this new vector, its object width is going to be times whatever part of the increment it is, and then the y component and the z component are just going to be whatever they are. And then this component name, or this game object name that we called C, it's going to be named in its object name plus I. So that's how it's going to name itself. Then as we go forward, it's going to destroy the clone, and then it's going to destroy the object. So that was quite a lot we went over, and a lot of new concepts. So let's just kind of see what all this did. So we're going to hit save. We're going to go back into Unity, and we're going to hit play. Actually, before we hit play, let's go back and just look here a second. Here's our screen. And here's the size of our actual sprites here. They're all listed here. So I'm going to hit play. And as you can see, it adjusted itself. It's not quite smooth yet, actually. It's still a little off to the side here. But it spread out to adjust itself to the size of everything here. Actually, let's go ahead and... Actually, let's just leave it. So it needs a little more smoothing, but as you can see, it took that picture and it extended its width out. And to do that, it just cloned itself. It just created 3 clones of each thing, which was the amount of the child needed. Looks like we're just getting pushed back here right now by our frog. But anyway, it created the clone so it could extend out for the width of the screen here, which is what we wanted. So now let's go back into our C# script. And we're going to uncomment out this portion of the code down here, which is the last one on the bottom. We were up here. And this is void late update, which is an update that happens after the regular update. And now we're saying here in our void late update that for each game object in the level, we want to reposition our child objects. What we want to do is that, I hit play, what we want to do is that as our character moves along here, we'll just jump over the frog. As our character moves along here, what we want is for, actually let me just go out a little bit. Let me hit play and pause. Actually, it'd be better to show it this way. Hit pause, gonna scroll out. What we want is that we have these objects right here that were created, these clones, and we want to be able to take this one right here when we go past, when we move over here and we get to the edge of this one over here, we want to take one and we want to move it in front. And we want to keep doing that over and over and over again as our character moves. And so, and likewise in the opposite direction, when we go back, we want the same thing to happen. So it seems like the background's moving, but we're just kind of keeping these restricted to the amount of clones that we created. So going back to our script, we're going to go ahead in this late update and we're going to reposition our child objects, and we're going to go up here and we're going to do that through this function right here that's typed in here, reposition child objects. And that is defined up here. We'll just take out the comments of this one. And like before, just hang on to that choke like up here. We'll get back to it later. It'll be included as this discussion goes on. So in our reposition child objects function here, which is going to pass through game object, which is object, just similar to up here, is that we first want to know how many game objects we have. So we have a transform equals our object.getComponent in children transform, which is basically just getting our objects. And then we want to know how many objects, or we want to know that we have more than one object. So if child.length is greater than 1, if we have more than 1, because we need more than 1 to be able to swap them in out, we're first going to just take interest, or actually we're only really interested in the first child and the last child. So we're going to go ahead and have a game object, called it first child, and it's going to be this children object, the first one of the game object. Now it's number 1, and before we talked about the array starting with 0, but don't forget 0 is the parent object. So the first child object is 1. And then the last child object is what we wanted to find because we're interested in the first one and the last one. It's the children.length minus 1 dot game object. And then we're going to create a float called half object width. And that's because when we're talking about the transform of an object, which we have here, the transform is in the middle of the object, and we want the bounds of the object. So we want to be able to define that as the bounds of it. We want to be able to define it as the distance from the center to the edge. So I'm interested in the bounds of the object dot extents. And if you Google extents is really just getting half the distance from the center to the edge of an object in the x direction. So now that that has been established, what we want to do is we want to create 2 if statements here that are going to be used for moving our objects here. So one is actually the reverse of the other. So we're just going to go over the first one that, if we see here, if transform.position plus x plus screen bounds, which is the position of the object, plus the bounds of it in the x direction, is greater than last child dot transform dot position dot x plus half object width. Actually, I said this wrong, because when we're talking about the transform dot position dot x and the screen bounds, we're talking about pretty much the movement of the camera. And if things move beyond the edge of the last child, plus this half object width, because remember I just said transform dot position is in the middle. So it's basically saying, all right, from the middle to the edge, and if this position is greater than that, then we want to take first child and we want to set it as the last sibling. So basically, in a nutshell, is that we're taking our very first object, that is the child, and we're moving it to the front. And it'll probably make a little more sense when we see it. And then, basically we're just establishing this position as this vector 3, saying that the last child dot transform dot position dot x plus the half object width times 2, which is basically just describing where we want to put that object. And then we're just going to leave it at the x and y positions. And when we say this else if right here, it's basically just reversing it. This one right here is being used when we're moving to the right, and it will scroll our background. And if we turn around and go to the left, this is what this one's doing. As you can see, it has a minus here instead of a plus, because in this direction we're going positive, and we're going back in the negative direction. So now let's see how this all came together. We'll hit save. We'll go back into Unity. And to give a better demonstration, to better explain what we've been doing, I'm going to go down to Window, Layouts, and a 2x3 split. And our cherries and health are kind of in the way. We have some resizing to do here, or some better layout work, but that's not this video. So right here is our scene. I'm just going to back out a little bit, and so you can see how when I hit play, the background will scroll to the right. So we're going to hit play here, and here's our clones. And as you can see, they moved out a little more nicely. Remember, this was kind of cut off earlier. So if I click here and I move over and I jump over our frog, and here's the edge of the thing, and as you saw, it moved. So let's go back a little further, and as we get to near the edge, it's going to move again, and it's disappearing over here. This one's going, and it's going forward. So that's what's going on with our background. So we'll go all the way over here. We'll do it again. And then we're going to go over here to the left, and as we move this way, it will start populating over in this direction. Jump over our frog, make them disappear. We'll gather our cherries. So that's how this is working right now. But as you can see, can you see it? Not really, but this is really kind of smooth, but there's ways to make this a little smoother, and we'll just get to that right now. So some of you might be, depending on what sprites you chose, if you didn't choose the same ones I did, you might see in some cases, actually let me go back and hit play again. You might see in some spaces where and maybe you can see them a little bit here. You might see in some places where you might have some connection issues between each individual set of sprites. That was actually the edge of the camera right there. And actually on mine, I can't seem to see too many seams, but you might have some on yours, and you might have some issues with your scrolling at a time. So I'm gonna actually put those two codes in. That will help that issue, though it's gonna be a little harder to see. There's my little guy moving. He's getting pushed by his frog. So anyway, we're gonna go ahead and include those. And these are the last two things here. We're gonna have these two public floats. One is the choke, and that will solve the problem with the seams, and the public float scroll speed, which will solve a little bit of the problems if you're having issues with the speed at which everything's instantiating. So we're actually going to take the choke we had here, and we're simply going to add it to the bound size right here, or the width of our object. And down here also, as you saw earlier, we have one for the bounds of this one also, and that should close up those seams a little bit. And in terms of any issues with speed of things instantiating, or moving rather, not instantiating, I got this scroll speed. So I created a vector 3. It's got, it's a velocity, and we have two vectors 3s right here, and they're desired position and smooth position. So this will smooth out some of the movements as it scrolls along. It's just basically taking a transform of the position, and we're just adding a new vector 3 that's going to just make it speed up a little bit. And this one is just taking in the idea of the position and the desired position. It's taking this variable, putting it here, and then moving the velocity in that direction. And it's just the idea of just creating a little bit of a smoother movement in our code here. I'm not having a problem on my end, but like I said, if you might be having trouble with yours if you chose a different set of sprites. So I'm going to hit play. And actually, let me go here to our hierarchy, because I have to go to the main camera and I got to fill these in. So 0.25, you're just nudging these things in. And scroll speed, let's see what 3 does. Like I said, it's hard. Mine are not having issues. I'm just doing this just in case yours are having issues. And that way, if you're wondering, like, how do you solve it? Well, these codes should smooth out your movement and the bounds of your objects here. So, and if it isn't, just write me and we'll figure out what could be the problem with your game. I'm always trying as best I can to answer anyone in the comments section. And probably the best way to reach me is probably also through messaging through Facebook. I answer there too also. Gonna grab our thing. So my background looks nice and smooth. In the future video, we'll get to work on making this vertically look better. You can always increase the size and the scale of it to lift it up, also to fill it. But for right now, we have a nice scrolling background. So that's it for today. As always, thank you for watching. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, follow me on Facebook and Twitter, and support me on Patreon. All links are in the description below. And a big special thank you to all my Patreon supporters. See you next time.